In the hustle and bustle of the world that we live in, I think that a lot of people feel like they're constantly being chased. Maybe not so much in a literal sense, but maybe you feel the same way. It could be something like just being chased by constant responsibilities in your life, chased by a full schedule of things to do, or even being chased by health problems or so many other issues. And so, I have to say that aside from Jesus, I think David is my favorite character in the whole Bible for a lot of different reasons. And so there is a story in the Bible regarding him, how before he took the throne, King Saul, the guy in charge, of course, was jealous of David. You see, Saul had a very big ego. And there was a time when David started taking the attention from Saul. Not like he set out to try to do it. He just did what God wanted him to do. And people noticed these things and thought highly of David. So it didn't sit well with Saul. It got so bad through a series of events that Saul took his army and literally was chasing David all around the region. And so you would find that story in 1 Samuel 23 if you're interested. But it came to the point where Saul was closing in on David, ready to capture him. They were very close together. And it seemed like at the last moment, though, a messenger was sent to the king, and he delivered this message saying that he needs to attend to business elsewhere because the enemy Philistines are attacking Israel in another area. So Saul needs to get his army over there and basically give up this chase on David. So sort of how God works, at the last moment, saving David, who was doing nothing wrong at the time. But that just shows you how obsessed with David Saul was. And so I bring this story up because David was literally being chased, okay? But imagine being in his shoes and you're being chased. There's nothing that you did wrong. It's just somebody's jealous of you and wants to kill you. And so it was in this setting that many scholars believe that out of this experience, one of the most well-known songs ever was written. And David was the writer of that song. David was everything as far as a man could be. He was a great military mind. He was, of course, would become a king. And he was also a singer and a musician and a songwriter too. So out of this experience, he wrote what we know of as the 23rd Psalm. Now I'll tell you, if you would go home and Google all that, you're going to find some different suggestions on the background of the 23rd Psalm. But I was looking at some Jewish commentators, and I think these guys are guys I'm going to lean towards their interpretation because they've been studying this for thousands of years, so they probably have some more insight. Some people say, that was written at the end of David's life for some reasons that don't really make a lot of sense. I really think it was in this context, but that's really besides the point here. It's just while being chased, he had the peace of mind that he could sit down and write the 23rd Psalm, which everybody, I'm sure, knows the first line at least. And to this day, this psalm in particular is still read by millions of people for sure. And it's still studied by scholars everywhere. People are still getting comfort from it. They're learning from it and so forth. So those are the verses that we'll read today. It's just 6 verses long. And so we'll read Psalm 23 from verses 1 to 6. It is a psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. May the Lord's blessing be added to the reading and hearing of his holy word. Recently, this psalm specifically has been giving me a great deal of comfort, and I sort of go through seasons in my spiritual journey, and I'm sort of back to a season where I'm really rediscovering the Psalms again. And again, so much has been written about the Psalms specifically, not even just this one, but like so many others, what I love about them is there's so many different layers to them. What I mean is you can read the words sort of mechanically or robotically, and you can glean knowledge from that psalm. It tells us information about God, about ourselves, about our relationship with God and other things, and all of that is well and good. But if we just leave it at an academic exercise, I think we're missing out on more of what God has for us. It's sort of like if you have your favorite song, and you hear it on the radio or you put the CD on or whatever. Okay, you might love the lyrics and you know what that person was saying, but when you add to it the melody and the musical composition behind it, the arrangement, it just adds so much more depth to it. And it means so much more when you consider that, I don't know if you probably had this experience, where you hear a song and you think, wow, somebody else knows exactly what I've been feeling, and they were able to put that into music. So it just adds all these extra layers to it. Now, I would say just about every Jewish and Christian person out there knows that you're talking about this psalm. If you go up and say, what do you think of when you hear the words, the Lord is my shepherd? Well, that's a psalm at very least, if they don't know what number it is. And so I noticed as I was reading this and studying it that after the introductory words, it's sort of everything he's talking about refers back to that first line, the Lord is my shepherd. And as I focused and prayed on those words, I began to experience it more deeply as well. And so verbalizing in our language is such an important part of saying something and what we mean when we say it. It adds a dramatic effect if you emphasize or de-emphasize certain words. Simple example, let's say if somebody says, he's a great worker. Okay, I tried to say that as mechanically and flatly as I could, but what's the difference if someone says he's a great worker? Well, maybe it's he's a great worker, but that guy over there, not so much. But now we don't have to say that to know what we mean when we emphasize that word. Or what about sarcasm? He's a great worker. Okay? You don't get that just by reading it off a page. So things like that, it just adds to the meaning whenever we're able to emphasize it. And of course, we have the Bible here, and we read it. We don't always know exactly how things were meant, just because we're not hearing it, we're just reading it. But when we consider about emphasis of the way that we say things, I got to thinking, I was looking at that line, the Lord is my shepherd. What difference does it make if you emphasize just one word or different words? For instance, how is this different? Okay, we could say the Lord is my shepherd. What about the Lord is my shepherd? What might that mean? Well, when I thought about the word is, I immediately thought in relation to God, Exodus 3. Bible says, then Moses said to God, if I come to the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? God said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. Now, when I first got saved, started reading the Bible, and, Genesis, that was easy, Exodus, we're 53 chapters into the Bible, still not too far. I thought, I am sent me to you. Just grammatically, it just doesn't really flow. You sort of stop and then you reread it, and, in time I sort of understood what he was saying. But God's response is so significant there. He's telling us about who he is and his character. He is, which means that's, of course, the verb to be. He is the creator because he has being in him, and our finite human minds can't quite wrap our minds completely around that. But he is, and that means so much. So when we say God is something, like the Lord is my shepherd, well, that could mean that he is the perfect embodiment of what that thing is. He is my shepherd. The shepherd is needed for sheep because, honestly, sheep are not smart. They're not smart creatures at all. I'm not being mean to any sheep out there. They're just intellectually, honestly, some of the stupidest creatures you can find from what I've read and understood. Now, it's been said that sheep are so, I don't want to keep using the word stupid, but you know what I mean, unintellectual, whatever, that they just want to follow whatever's closest to them. If one sheep, for whatever reason, gets off the path and starts going down a cliff and falls to its death, the one behind, guess what he's going to do? Oh, that sheep went there, so I'm just going to follow, and he falls over the cliff, and so on and so forth. They don't have the intellectual ability to think, if I do this, something bad is going to happen to me, like we can. And so when Jesus refers to us as sheep in the parables, for instance, we think, oh, sheep are so cute and cuddly and soft, and that must be why Jesus refers to us as sheep, because he thinks we're nice and cute and cuddly and all that. I wish that were the case. He's not really being all that complimentary to us. He's saying without God, we're pretty much like stupid sheep, where we don't know what to do, where to go, or anything like that. That's why he has to go out and rescue us. And it wasn't until I got saved that I realized how true that image was for me. I remember when I was that one out of the 100 that was straying and wandered away, and the shepherd left the 99 to get me. I finally understood what position and situation I was in. I was one of those stupid sheep too, because I was blinded to his goodness, just ignorant of spiritual things. But thank God that we are under the care of the good shepherd who leaves the fold to go and get us. Now, if we go back to that first line of the psalm, the Lord is my shepherd, how does it change if we emphasize the different word? What if I say, the Lord is my shepherd? Well, if you think back to grammar classes back in school, for many of us it was a long time ago, but whether you remember it or not, you were probably taught somewhere along the way that the word my is a personal possessive pronoun. And so it's the personal and the possessive nature that's really relevant here. He is my shepherd, because sheep require a personal attention from someone. That's why verse 3 says, he guides me along right paths. I thought back to the field trips that we would take back when I was in school. Usually it was to a museum or to a zoo, something like that. And what they would do, well, first of all, in my school, I know there's a lot of schools that were a lot larger than mine, but I'll say there might have been a total of 200 kids or so in the school, or class, I should say, or grade. So, of course, they divide them into groups, and then they ask for parents to volunteer to be chaperones. And so each group knew who their chaperone was. If your chaperone goes there, you go there. He goes there, you go there. And it's that simple. So he's or she is the one that you are focused on. Now, I was usually in a unique situation, separate from the other students, because They would always assign boys to a boy chaperone and the girls to a girl chaperone for obvious reasons. You go to the bathroom, you don't want to leave some of the kids outside. He or she can go in with them, and then they all get done, and then they leave together. Okay, that makes sense. Well, my dad was always a chaperone. He always made himself available. And it seemed like it was always harder to get male chaperones, too. There are a few younger ones here. This was back before Zoom meetings and before remote working and stuff like that. And so a lot of companies were just a little different about giving time off, honestly. Now it's a lot more relaxed, I think, in a lot of areas. But regardless, my dad always made that a priority. And the school was always very thankful too, because again, it's very hard to get a male chaperone. But when I went on that field trip, my dad was my chaperone. So he was my guide and he was my father at the same time. And so I knew that my guide had a personal relationship with me. I know that he had an eye out for the other boys, of course, in our group, but I knew he especially had his eye on me because there was something deeper than just a chaperone-student relationship. And so when I relate this to God, so many people live their lives thinking God doesn't care about them at all, and I can't imagine living that way. Have you ever heard someone say, God doesn't want me in heaven anyway? That is one of the saddest things to ever hear, and I've heard people say that. I think anyone who says that clearly is a lost sheep, for one thing. But again, aren't we glad that we have a personal shepherd that cares for us? That's what I think it means to say the Lord is my shepherd. Once again, let's go back to the first verse of the psalm and look at it one more time here. The Lord is my shepherd. Now, what difference does it make if we emphasize the Lord is my shepherd? Another grammar lesson for you quick. Shepherd is an object, a direct object actually, and in this case it defines the subject, the Lord. It says who or what office or occupation or so forth the subject is or the Lord is. He is the shepherd. That's the relationship that he has. It's a quick exercise for if somebody asks you, just out of the blue, who is the Lord to you? How would you respond to that? I think a lot of people would say the Lord is my judge. The Lord is my disciplinarian. How many people do you think automatically relate the Lord to something as comforting as a shepherd? Someone that loves you. We usually don't look at God in those terms all too often. Oftentimes people think of God in very harsh terms, like he's waiting up there in heaven ready to, throw the book at you and put the hammer down and all that. We already said that sheep need a shepherd to honestly save them from themselves as much as predators. But a shepherd is also a provider. And that's why when David wrote this psalm, his first thought of a shepherd was one who provides for his sheep. He's saying that by having a shepherd to watch over him, he has everything he needs. I shall not be in want. Of course, we want things, but we understand the context there of using the word want. We don't want for anything because we don't long for anything. We have everything that we need. How satisfying is that to live in that relationship, to know that you have everything that you need, not because of the efforts of your hands, which God uses that, but really because he's providing for you overall. I didn't realize until recently that many devout Jewish families to this day follow a tradition where on Saturday, the Sabbath day, they recite Psalm 23. And it makes a lot of sense. They know that on that day they are forbidden by God to work. And so they recite this psalm to have peace of mind, knowing that God is going to sustain them till tomorrow, even though they can't get out and work today. This is the focus in verse 4, where it says, "You prepare a table for me in the presence of my enemies." People obeyed God by going out and working those prior 6 days. And on the 7th day, God said, "I want you to rest." And so they did so, trusting that he was going to bless the work from the prior 6 days, that it would be more than enough for the 6th, and also provide for the 7th. And so it's not only that God gives them what they need, he goes over and above the call of duty. He sets a table before them too. And it's not just any table, it's in plain view of everybody, including their enemies, so they can see how your shepherd has taken care of you and blessed you. Reciting the psalm on the Sabbath provides both a conclusion to a week of toil before that, but it also sort of works as looking towards the beginning of the next week. God provided for me this Sabbath. I'm going to go out tomorrow and start working for 6 more days, and I trust that God is going to bless that enough to provide for the next Sabbath. So it's great how it works both ways. Therefore, because he has a good shepherd watching over him, David, the writer, can close out the song by saying in verse 6, "Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life." He couldn't say that if he didn't know that the shepherd had his best interests at heart. So once again, no matter which word you emphasize, it just opens up another layer to the Lord being our shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. When we emphasize is, I would ask you, does he abide in you? Does he occupy that place in your heart? That no matter what happens, can you rely on him, knowing he's never going to leave you nor forsake you? When we emphasize the my, I would also ask you, is he your personal shepherd? Or do you think of him, oh, he just cares for somebody else, or he's not even interested in any of us? Do you feel like he has his watchful eye on you? And when we emphasize that last word, shepherd, I would ask also, is he the one that you give credit to for providing your every need? Or are you thinking, oh, it's all because of what I've done. If I don't go out there, I won't, God's not going to help me out at all. And, he's just some disembodied spirit, presence, somewhere, all that kind of stuff. So many people think that their livelihood relies on their own efforts. But the person who trusts in God doesn't live with that worry. Also, is God just someone who's there if you need him to get you out of a jam? You have a tight spot, maybe I need healing today, so now I'll sort of call on him and see if he'll help me out here. Do you see him as your provider, that he's there for you all the time, not just when you realize that you need him, but every day and every second? A closing thought is this, and I don't know if you've ever thought of it this way, but our image of God oftentimes influences the type of person we are. And what I mean by that, if you think of God as mostly a judge, you're probably going to be a person your first inclination will be to judge other people by what they do or don't do. Or if you think of God as something good like mercy, because you realize that God has been merciful to you, more often than not, you're first going to withhold the judgment, and you're going to be more merciful towards other people because that's how you feel God has been towards you. If you think of God mostly as loving, which he is, you probably would treat more people with love first, more so than anything else. And if you think of God as your personal shepherd who takes care of your needs, then you'll look for opportunities to care for and love other people and shepherd them to the best way that you can. And as David writes, for his name's sake. It's for his sake, not our sake. It doesn't reflect all that the most on us, we should be shining the appreciation back on the one who loved us first. If you treat others fairly and lovingly, I'd say that's probably because you have that image of God, and that's a good thing. So it's probably why David chose to close out his song with the word, surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Let us bow our heads and go to him in prayer. Heavenly Father, you are our shepherd. And just to say that means one thing, but when we really look at it, it means so much more that mere words really can't express. But they help us anyway, and so we go through these exercises to emphasize different words and to research what a shepherd does for a sheep and to look at the intellect of an average sheep and all those kind of things. And when we do that, it just opens our eyes to your goodness and how much you really do truly love us, no matter what goes on in the world. If we start feeling discouraged and depressed and angry and all those kind of emotions, we know that you are still our shepherd. You still are. You are the creator. You created us before with knowing that we would fall, knowing that you would then provide an opportunity for us to be reconciled to you, knowing that you would send your son, knowing that he would be obedient to the call, knowing that he would endure unspeakable pain of having nails driven through his hands and feet. All for us. God, what can we say as a result of all that? You're still our shepherd. You still love us, despite all the ways that we constantly fall short of your righteous standard. But we're thankful for it, and we want to be the best representations of your son Jesus as we can be. So we just thank you this day, and we ask for opportunities to share the love of Christ to those that you bring across our path this coming week. And also, maybe there's a time this week where we will really need just your comfort. And in that time, we know that we can pull out our Bibles, flip to Psalm 23 and read it and be comforted with the knowledge that you are our shepherd, that you love us, that you prepare a table for us, and that we will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So we thank you, and we ask your blessing on the rest of this day that you've given us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.